If the point of Dadaism was to communicate civil unrest and nonconformity, and they did that by making art that we question if it was art, then what kind of artistic techniques could have they possibly passed on to us? I'll stop on Hannah Hawk again to talk about photo montage because it was more than just cutting up newspapers and magazines and piecing them together. She was using these photos to create a narrative without drawing or painting. But it wasn't just collage. It was a lot about what do these two objects look like in relation to each other. She really played with the size of objects, so things that would normally look small looked comically large next to something that was normally average or large size in the field. Fragmenting this art style and not using traditional methods was also the way for her to communicate that it was cutting up social norms and serving them to you. There were also typographical elements, think serial killer style, where you're forming different letters. This was speaking more to culture and repurposing what journalists were putting out about nationalist intention. Remember, in Dadaism, they stopped trusting the government and the institutions that were supposed to protect them. So how do you take something that they used to believe and turn it into something that you question? Well, you use their words, you use their language, and you use their photos, and you make a mockery of it by putting it all together in a way that tells a completely different story. By treating these images like the raw materials themselves, the artistic expression became the narrative. And it was often used as a public mirror, protesting things like fascism and attacked bourgeoisie ideals of the society. The cut and paste photo montage of collage wasn't the only skill or technique that Dadaism brought us. Another one was cameraless photography. It was mostly utilized by Man Ray and Christian Schad. They would take photosensitive paper and instead of putting it in the context of a light and a lens to burn an image onto it, they were placing objects on top of that paper. And they were also doing some funky things within the developer room. Things that we take for granted now when we use Photoshop is our linear burn and overdeveloping things, but you used to have to do that by hand. So in the dark room, they would create solarization, do almost like an airbrushing technique to make objects look different, and just experimented with this idea of how do we use this medium as photographic paper and our chemical developers to create something that was traditionally meant for photography. Remember, a lot of this was just taking everyday objects, things that we knew what to expect from, and turning them on their head and making you question, why are you using it that way? Now that you understand the techniques and skills that were needed to create this style of art, let's see how it changed the way art worked and what remnants of it you still see today.